Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and welcome to my astrology channel. On this video, I'm going to take as my centerpiece the new moon in Capricorn on the 13th of January, but there are some other celestial stories and those are going to be extremely interesting. Now, this video will be posted on the 2nd of January, so we're just heading into the first month of a new year, 2021. And it promises to be such an important year. And in point of fact, a very kind of different tone and character to this year than last year. But having said that, as we enter 2021 and we go through these first couple of weeks, it will seem as though we're just dragging over all the stuff we thought we might have left behind at the end of December. And I suppose you could say that the planets and the alignments, they're not at all concerned with our calendar. The idea that we bring our year to an end and start a new one, still in their alignments, they are moving and separating and angling each other. And it matters not one jot whether it's January the 1st or May the 26th. So I think one of the things I want to say before I really get into the astrology is that don't judge this book by its cover. In other words, don't assume by January's events, whether those are the events in your own life or whether we're looking at events on the world stage, don't assume that that's what the rest of the year is going to be like. Obviously, some of the events that happen in January are going to have a knock-on effect on certain situations throughout the year. But it's really the kind of flavor that we have in January, the intensity of all the influences. We're like rolling from one crisis to the next. That is going to even out as we get through 2021. And of course, I've got a lot of hopes for this new year, in the sense of 2021, in that we have this Jupiter in Aquarius and Saturn in Aquarius. It's such a very, very different feel from what we've had over the last 2.5 years. And so I do remain very positive about 2021, even though during the course of this video, it might seem as though I'm saying quite the reverse. So one of the things I have to look at as we look at the new moon in Capricorn on the 13th of January is, like all new moons, it comes with the theme of new beginnings. We open a new chapter on the new moon, and we open a new chapter 13 times a year in different areas of our horoscope. But each new moon isn't just a new moon on its own. It's contained, or it's seen, its setting is within all the other angles, the planets, where they are, how they are angling each other, and all those other things tend to play into what kind of new beginning or new chapter this will be. So I would say this is a new beginning coming out of challenging circumstances, so that whatever happens to us individually in January, the circumstances that kind of make for our individual new beginning are going to be because we face certain challenges. Now, one of the other things about January as a whole is the fact that I think a lot of people don't quite understand. When astrologers make their predictions, we're looking at the transits of the planets as they are day to day and the angles they're forming with other planets. That's how we make our predictions. So when you've got something, for instance, like a Sun-Pluto conjunction, which happens on the 14th of January and is certainly very much in play with the new moon on the 13th, although that's the day we look at and we see it at its most exact, 8 days before that, it's been coming into being, and 8 days afterwards, it's fading. A bit like standing on a station and hearing an express train coming in the distance. It gets louder and louder and louder, passes you on the platform, and then goes out the other way. And the reason I'm mentioning this is that on January the 5th, Mercury is conjunct Pluto. On January the 14th, here we have the Sun conjunct Pluto. And by the time we get to the very end of January, which is not really our concern at the moment, but we've got Venus conjunct Pluto. So it's like one long Pluto dirge, really. And Pluto's principles of elimination and transformation are very much alive and well in this first month of the year. Now, the other point about the period around that new moon is that Mars, the planet of action, newly arrived in Taurus, so we have a new kind of Mars. It's angling up to the planet Saturn, so that we have that new moon really couched or set in a Mars Saturn situation. And that's why I say a new beginning out of challenging circumstances. Well, because Mars is squaring Saturn on the 13th and on the 14th, the Sun is conjunct Pluto, we've got our two friends together again. We've got a Saturn Pluto dirge going on. If you remember through last year, and certainly this time last year in January, we had the big Saturn Pluto conjunction, and that was backed by an eclipse. And of course, all at that time of year, if you remember, the famous Iranian general was assassinated. We had the threat of a really serious war. And then, of course, we had the coronavirus. So Saturn and Pluto were very much the backdrop to why 2020 was a hard year for all of us. So they are no longer quite together, but they are still together in January. They are about 8 or 9 degrees apart, and that is still considered a conjunction. So the minute we still get these two planets together, we still have a residue of all that upheaval to go through. And let's think about what's happening in this early January period, and in fact, right through January. We've got United Kingdom is finally leaving Europe, so we've got a whole new system ahead of us, a whole new life, and that's very interesting and a little bit scary. And as we go on a little bit further through the month on the 20th, of course, we've got a whole new administration coming into the White House. And if you think about it for a minute, in terms of the United Kingdom, about half the population of the United Kingdom wanted to stay in Europe, and the other half didn't. And it's the same really with the United States. You know, almost half the country wanted Donald Trump to have a second term, and a little over half the country thought that wasn't such a great idea. So you have a lot of division, and it's still these echoes of Saturn and Pluto. And of course, we have that in our own lives as well, in that we are trying very hard to get ourselves around the circumstances we've landed in. And it seems as though we just can't get away from it. We can't get away from the themes that are in our own lives. We will get away from them. And the way to do that, of course, is first of all, one of my favorite expressions, you have to manage your circumstances, not to keep looking so far down the line that you think, well, if I do this, then that'll happen. And what if that happens? That makes you immobile. You get terminal inertia that way. You really just have to deal with the thing in front of you. And I think for many of us, looking at these aspects in that first half of January before the new moon, is just dealing with all the stuff that we simply have to deal with. And I think when we think about Saturn, which is about responsibilities and duty, and we think about Pluto, which is about elimination and transformation, we each have a duty to ourselves and also to the people we love and the people who are in our lives, as well as we have to our fellow citizens and citizens of the world, to act with discipline and duty. That is the Saturn Code. And in the sense of elimination, we just have to get rid of what we don't need anymore, lighten our load so that we can go forward into this new era, this more Aquarian era, without all the trappings of the old stuff all over us. And one of the things that I think, I'd also like to say, at this point, in reference really to both Britain and also the USA, it's very interesting that at this period of time, there is huge transformation going on in terms of how the countries are now going to move forward. But you know that it isn't until 2023 that you really see the results of what is taking place now. And, you know, when we look at the United Kingdom's chart, that Jupiter is at 1 degree of Leo, so we've got that Jupiter Saturn conjunction there. We're also starting this new era, Jupiter. It's a new Jupiter cycle, if you like. We have to wait also to see, when it joins up with Saturn. Jupiter will join up with Saturn. Saturn will get to its own Saturn return in 2023 at the same time as America goes through its Pluto opposition and Saturn, coming up to its own natal moon. There's just so many parallels in these two countries. And I think if I had every country of the world, we could just look at them all, we'd see that there's a lot of echoes going on with this new kind of cycle. So coming back to the new moon again, on the 13th of January, this new moon, of course, sets a new cycle in motion, and one that will be completed on the 24th of June. It's a 6-month cycle, and obviously very important for Cancerians and Capricorns in particular, because of that idea of starting a 6-month period, and the things you do, the things you've set in motion, will have that sense of completion. They'll give their full story by the time we get to the 24th of June. But in a way, all of us need to think about this because it's an important new moon in Capricorn. Capricorn, wherever it is in all our charts, has to do with building and structure, responsibilities, and really the material form of our life. So with a new moon, we get to start that new cycle. And maybe it's also a period when we prepare our taxes, we have a look at what's going on in our financial house and see what needs to be changed and redone, thrown out, what accommodations we need to make, and perhaps some of the things we set in motion financially and materially will have their upside. We will see how well we've done in about 6 months' time. And I also want to look at this idea of how every January, round about the 18th of January, or the middle of January in this case, um, we get Black Monday. And that is technically the worst Monday in the whole of the year, because it's like the distance from the celebrations of Christmas and the feeling that we have of we're starting a new year. Suddenly reality sets in, and we're looking at the year being, we've still got the same stuff we're dealing with. So that is a Black Monday. And we've got the aspects that really fuel that. So one of the things that we tend to do or like to do in January is to have a bit of a detox. And again, coming back to those big Pluto aspects happening certainly around the same time as the new moon, we don't just need to detox our systems in the sense of having better eating habits and, all the things that we've done that have now actually created a situation where we're not functioning as well as we normally do. Yes, we can do that the benefit of our health. But I think we also need to look at this idea that we need to detox our life. I mean, just how many activities and practices in our lives are things that we don't really need to do. They're getting in the way of our growth. They're getting in the way of what we need to do. So I think around this new moon time is an absolutely perfect opportunity for us to be ruthlessly honest with ourselves. And remember, we've got that Mars-Saturn square at the same time, which is all about reality checks. We need to look at what really in our lives we don't need, what's holding us back. And it could be so many things. It could be our fears of the unknown. It could be our reliance on certain practices. It could be our reliance on certain friendships, which we know instinctively are bad for us. And it's having the courage to say, I need to get rid of all these things. I'm going to, liberate myself so that I can really get into 2021 uncluttered and start a new phase. It's also interesting about this time around the time of the new moon in Capricorn that we start to look at our relationships as well. It's about a month before Valentine's Day, and a lot of thinking goes on about what will happen on Valentine's Day. If you're in a new relationship, it's as though I wonder if this Valentine's Day is going to mark a new stage of our relationship, more permanent, more committed. Or is it that you look at that date with a bit of dread and think, oh goodness, Valentine's Day with this relationship? Oh no, not this time. So a lot of kind of editing goes on about our relationships. So sometimes you'll find people distancing themselves, ghosting each other around the time of a relationship because it's like, I don't want to make any more commitments to this relationship because there'll be too many expectations for Valentine's Day. So again, we're looking at this period around the middle of January, the new moon in Capricorn, the Sun-Pluto conjunction, Mars square Saturn, and a lot of really important decision making going on in all our lives. And I think that's the purpose, I always say, of the videos that I do. They're like a heads up. It's like, let's look at the weather, let's look at the map, let's see where we're going, and let's understand why everyone else is behaving like this and what we need also to be aware of so that we can behave and do the right things at the right time. So, focusing on that new moon again and thinking in terms of new chapters and new beginnings, we all get to do that. And of course, you can go and look at my monthlies to find out in more detail what it means sign by sign. But I think just in general, looking at the state of the world, the state of all the big things going on the world's stage, we have the idea that a lot of pieces on the chessboard of life have to be moved around at this point. We take it upon ourselves, as I said, a few minutes ago, this idea of taking responsible action, of being responsible for ourselves, acting responsibly in terms of our family and the people we love and the friends and our fellow workers, and then sort of extending it out a bit and thinking, well, we need to act responsibly for the benefit of our fellow man as well. And I think that really is the message of this new moon in Capricorn, backed as it is by these other very formative and important influences. So I sort of reached the end of everything I wanted to say about this first video of 2021. Got a lot more to go. And as I said when I began, don't judge this book, this 2021, by its cover. There's going to be a lot going on in January. We're not going to like one little bit. It is going to be very volatile. And, there's going to be a lot of things happening worldwide that are going to reshape some of the territory. But sometimes when we have to go through these difficulties, it's like going through a portal. Might be a bit scary at the time because we don't know what's on the other side of it. But we have to have confidence. We have to have belief in ourselves that we will get through the portal, and on the other side, we will be remaking our individual new worlds, but also so will the planet. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to being here again, whether I'm doing my next important astrological event or I'm doing my monthlies for February. Bye for now.